Hope is here. The way to break free with your host, Angela Pedigo, will light a flame within you. Host Angela Pedigo is an author, speaker, and certified life recovery, grief, and joy restoration coach. Angela uses her own life experiences to help you navigate and guide you to success. She also has developed tools that incorporate her faith and her drive to overcome any obstacle in life. So please welcome the host of The Way to Break Free, Angela Pedigo.
Welcome, everybody, to The Way to Break Free. I'm your host, Angie Pedigo, and I'm glad that you are tuning in today. Got somebody very special to me on the show today, one of my very best friends, Briley McPherson. I'll go ahead and apologize up front. We might get a little crazy before the day's over with, because when we get together, we kind of get a little wild sometimes.
It happens.
Briley has been in my life for a few years now, 3 or 4 years now, and I just love her so much. She has been through a lot. She does a lot. She does a lot.
About that.
You do. You do so much for the community. We got a lot of good things to tell you. I want to talk about where she's been, where she's at, and where she's going. And we'll just jump in, Briley. We'll jump in. Briley has a lot going on, and we're going to share more about that with you later. But let's go back.
Okay.
Let's kind of go back to when we first started. We were really getting to know each other.
Yeah.
We were doing Bible studies and things like that together.
Yeah.
But then you shared some things with me that I'm just in awe of how you overcame a lot of stuff. So let's just go there. Can you take us there? Briley had a battle with postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is one of the silent things that new moms suffer with silently. And I think there's a fear attached to that. Maybe, if I speak up and I say something, then does that mean that I'm a bad mom? No, not at all. It's something that women go through a lot as, sometimes it might happen before childbirth, and then sometimes, it's after, and it can take a while to overcome. And people don't understand it, but they're scared, I think, sometimes. So I'm going to let you speak on that a little bit more. So take us there.
Okay.
Take us to, when did you first realize something wasn't right?
So, I have 2 daughters. With my oldest daughter, I had just a little minor complication during her birth, and didn't really think much about it, whatever. And I was fine. Didn't really see much postpartum there. Kind of, when you're just a first time mom, you have all those. It's just overwhelming at times. So, but with my second daughter, things was totally different. So, whenever I first seen something wrong is when I would want to go to bed early. Whenever I had, a 2-month-old, it was like I couldn't shut my mind off of the what ifs, and that is what really started triggering the postpartum I felt for me, because your mind is your worst enemy for me, in my opinion. So long story short, when you have a baby and, you're going into the hospital, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to have this baby, whatever. So I went into labor that morning, and I told my husband, I was like, I think I'm having contractions. I don't really know. He's like, are you having contractions or not? I was like, yes, I'm having contractions.
I can hear him now.
I was like, I'm having contractions. And he was like, okay. He's like, well, let's go, let's go all. And I was like, no, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and get something to eat, because they ain't going to let me have nothing whenever I get there. And he was like,
good thinking.
Yes. He was like, oh, Riley. And I was like, just come on. And so went and got something to eat, dropped my oldest off, and then headed down to the hospital. And, I was feeling contractions the whole way. And we got down there, and I was like, I think I'm going into labor. I had to go in the emergency room because I wasn't, going to get checked in or anything like that, because it was, emergency. So I went in, and I was like, I think I need to be checked. So the whole time I'm laying there, whenever the nurse is fixing to check me to see how far along I am, I'm like, Lord, please just let me be 1 centimeter. If I had walked in here and I'm not even a centimeter dilated, I'm going to be like, why in the world did I do this? So she checks me, and she's like, oh yeah, you're about a 6 or a 7. I said, what? And she said, you're about a 6 or a 7 centimeters long. And I said, oh, wow. So by that time, my husband's up there. He's like, what did she say? And I said, she said about 6 or 7. She said, we're going to have a baby by dinner. I said, okay. So we got there at like 9:30, and I was like, okay, it's going to be 12 o'clock. We're going to have this baby. You know, everything's going to be good, blah, blah, blah. So 9:01 rolls around and I finally have Arlo. So the first time the doctor came in, it was a doctor on call, and I had called him from the house. I'm like, hey, doc, I think I might be going to labor, you know, whatever. And I could tell I had woke him up, and he was like, are you sure? I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, you call me back if it gets worse. And so I called him back. So I came on in, and it was the same doctor I talked to on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he checked me, and I could tell by the look on his face, like something was wrong. He said, I feel an ear. And I said, what do you mean you feel an ear? And he said, I think we're going to have to wait a little bit before you can do anything, because she had put her head back on her back. Like she had rolled her neck around instead of like keeping her head tucked. She had rolled it around on her back. So I was like, okay. So I had waited 2 hours, come in, still hadn't moved her neck down. 2 hours again, and we had waited and waited and waited. And he finally told me, he said, you can either have a C-section, you know, if it gets to that, you can do a C-section, but I think you can have her. And I said, okay. I said, that's fine. I want to do whatever's best for her. I said, it doesn't matter to me, you know, just take care of her. And he was like, okay. So finally, he come in there. I finally got an epidural, everything like that. And he come in there and he said, she's going to be born face first. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, face first. And I was just thinking, you know, my oldest daughter was born sunny side up. So I was thinking maybe that was something similar. Mm-hmm. So she was born face first. And the best way I know how to describe it is, instead of a watermelon coming out the way it's supposed to, you know, this way, it was coming out the opposite way.
Yes.
And so when they told me that, I was like, immediately I was like full of, what do you mean? So then I could tell that by the more people that came in there, that this was not something that was normal.
So you weren't like to the panic mode yet?
No, I wasn't in panic mode at all. I was just like, okay, this is just something that happens. Mm-hmm. So, and it is something that happens, but I didn't realize how, you know, kind of rare it was. Mm-hmm. And so one of the nurses come in there and told my husband, they said, this is such a rare birth that there's going to be like 8 or 10 people in here to see it be born. I said, what do you mean? You know, what? I'm, you know, still in labor trying to figure out what's wrong. By this time, they had me in a pretzel. They had me, you know, on all fours trying to get her to move so it would be an easier delivery. So finally, one of the night shift nurses come in and she said, hey, we're on night shift and we're going to do something different. And I said, all right, sister, whatever you want to do, let's do it. Because I'm like, I'm here, you know, this is 9 hours of labor. And when they told me I was going to have a baby by dinner, I hadn't even got a baby yet. So when she come in at like, I think she came in at like 8, within like an hour, I was having a baby because she helped me like do some stuff to help her move down. Well, they had walked out of the room and I told Trey, I said, you got to get them in here now. I said, she's fixing to be here. So finally they came in and whenever it's like I kind of just remember people like filing in because there was like a nurse for me, Trey, 2 nurses back here, a doctor for Arlo, and I want to thank the doctor that, you know, that was delivering. I mean, there was several people in there. I can't even remember, but I just remember like just kind of being, you know, I just remember people. I couldn't tell you their faces or nothing like that, but I just remember thinking, oh, wow, this is something. With all those people, I thought, they're going to think something's wrong with my kid. So before I started pushing, the doctor told me, he said, she is not going to look like, you know, she is going to be really beat up. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, she's going to like be, you know, bruises. There's going to be bruises. There's going to be, you know, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, okay, you know, I wouldn't understand what they were saying. So whenever, you know, a baby is born, you know, you hear the crying, stuff like that. And I looked at the nurse that was the nurse for Arlo. And I said, when she comes out, I said, if you see anything, I said, because I wanted her on top of me, you know, right, just to have that moment. And I said, you grab her before she ever comes to me. If there is anything, I said, I want her to be okay. So after I seen all the people coming in and stuff like that, and we was, getting ready to push and things like that, I'll never forget the whole time I was in labor, whenever it got right to where Arlo was fixing to, be born into the world, I remember looking at my husband saying, I can't do this, Trey. I can't do this. I'm fixing to, I can't do it. Like, I just felt like there was no more left in me. And just thank God, looking back, God was there. And
how many hours have you been in labor?
I had been in labor for, probably 13 hours counting that whole morning. Yeah, because I just was being stubborn and didn't want to just go on. But looking back, God was there. That wasn't me. God delivered my baby. Jesus is right there sitting next to me and Trey, because that's the only thing that I could, go back and looking at it now, was there holding my husband's hand and me, because, and was delivering my child, because she came out and she was the only thing I can, like, when a kitten or like a dog, I'm not trying to compare my child to an animal.
She's a pet groomer too,
yes,
so she loves her fur babies.
But they like, like that little soft. That's what Arlo was doing. So
kind of a week.
A week, yeah. And I had not prepared myself because I didn't know what to expect. But her whole face looked like me and Trey had just beat her to a pulp.
Oh no.
Yeah, her eyes was black. Her head was where she had been the birth canal trying to be born for so long. Her head had like all of her face skin, I guess that's the best way to say it, had come to the top of her forehead. And they told me, that's like, we don't know if this is going to be a hematoma or not. So anyway, after about 2 days, it finally all went down. All of it was, better and stuff like that. She didn't look like she was bruised or anything like that. And that was not anything me or Trey done. That was simply the hand of God, because I don't, you look at people that get bruised from any type of, whatever it may be. It takes a long time for something like that to get healed. And my child pretty much didn't have any swelling or nothing by day 3. So, yeah.
Did you all have to stay in the hospital for extended length of time?
Yeah, we did. So I was expecting, like with your second child, you pretty much get to, go home maybe the next day. And I was like, I'll never forget that nurse coming in there that was a doctor for her. And I said, so we're going to go home today? And she was like, nah. She said, if this would have been different, Briley, you could go home today. And I kept on thinking, what is their deal? What is the big deal, about, okay, all right, I didn't realize, how hard it was, like how serious they thought it was. I was just thinking, like, get my kid out and make sure she's okay.
Do you think you were still in shock mode?
Yeah, I was definitely still in shock mode, because like I couldn't even, I just remember thinking, I had to get up and walk around after I had her, because I was like, I've got to get myself moving so I can, take care of her, if something, whatever. And I guess I was still kind of in shock mode, because I was just so concerned for her, and just worrying about her eyes and her nose. And when they had told me that hematoma on her, it was just very traumatic. And going back and looking at it now, I could talk about it, but there was several months where I could not even talk about it, because I was in so much fear of her life, because I didn't, I think that is the worst thing a parent could go through, is something tragically happen to their child, or something happened to their child.
Yeah.
And I just kind of buried it.
Yeah.
And didn't deal with it.
So do you think that's when the initial onset of when you were talking about postpartum, like when you felt like it was coming on, you noticed when you didn't want to get up and you had a 2-month-old at home, because of the thoughts and the fear of thoughts, what could happen.
Yes.
Do you think that was that whole birthing experience was the onset of that fear?
I think looking back at how traumatic that was for me, not during the time, because I was in fight mode, during that time. I was just like, what do we got to do? What do we got to do? Let's let her be okay. Let her be okay. But then after that all sunk in and I realized everything was okay, and I realized how serious it was, that's when it sunk in for me. So probably about 6 months after she was born, My brother had been in recovery for about probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, and he was going to a Waymakers. And I had heard him talk about it, and I was like, I wonder if I could just go there, or just to talk to somebody, just to, one, make sure that I am not losing my sanity for all of these crazy thoughts that's running through my head about, what if this would happen? What if that would happen? What if you're not, whatever. So that's when I finally took my little girl with me one day and went out to Waymakers.
Well, we are going to hold that thought right there. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in just a moment. I want to pick back up on this conversation. We'll be back in just a moment.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back from the break. We are with Briley McPherson, and we are in the middle of an amazing story. If you missed the first few minutes, you need to go back and listen. So we're talking about postpartum depression and her experience with how that came on. Now, Briley, before the break, you had talked about you leading up to that. You were explaining how you had held these feelings in, and you were stuffing those down. That you couldn't talk about it for a while, and then you reached out and you were able to get some help to talk through those things. What were the things that you were holding inside? Can you kind of give us a little bit of glimpse of that? That way, if there's moms out there listening who are experiencing postpartum depression, how can they relate to some of those thoughts and stuff?
So, first of all, you're not a bad mother. Don't think I'm the only one that's having these thoughts. Do not think I'm having this thought that means I'm a terrible person. Right. No, that is completely far from that. So what made me really want to start and get help is I remember I was getting ready to send my oldest to a school, and for some reason, my mom was like, "You've got to quit watching the news. You've got to quit watching the news." I'm like, okay. And I just had this crazy thought, was like, what if somebody comes by in a van and just grabs her and kidnaps her and I cannot find her? And that just tore me up. And just because you see everything on the news, you see everything on the internet, and I'm like, that is just one of the worst things I think that could happen to a parent. And I remember thinking, I'm not sending her to school. I'm not doing it. My husband was like, I said, do you not think about stuff like that? And he's like, no, Riley, and not till now. And I'm like, well, I guess you're thinking about it now, ain't you? And he was like, well, and I said, well, I'm sorry, my brain just works like that. But I think when you're a mom and you're a parent and you just that motherhood, you think of all the what ifs that could go wrong. And until this lady right here sitting to the left of me told me to change my what ifs to even ifs, I had a hard time with that. And so that's when I reached out to you and got help. And I wouldn't have knew about it unless, my brother had been going out there. And so I went out there one day with Arlo, and I had her on my hip, and I just started crying to Angie. I said, Angie, I have got to talk to you. And so I just explained to her, I was having all these crazy thoughts in my head. I couldn't sleep. I only wanted to sleep, just to turn my mind off. I felt terrible because it was like, do I shut my mind off, or do I get up and fix my, do I rock my daughter to sleep? And, that's one of the things that I still hold on to. It's like, but praise God for my husband that he is, and the amazing father that he is, because he's seen that I was struggling, and he was just like, it's okay. It's fine, Briley. You're not, it's okay. You're doing what you got to do. It's not a big deal. And, going back, I used to feel, so guilty for that. And, I shouldn't feel guilty. I should feel grateful because of the amazing person he is. And, anyway, I finally got over that, and I explained all that to you. And turns out I had a lot more traumatic experiences in my life that I got to deal with through Broken Princess and the 12-step program. And that's kind of led me to start really walking in my faith. I've always knew God. I've always knew Jesus, but I was always of the mindset of, I'm be there on Sunday, Lord, but I'm going to be doing some other stuff on Saturday. All right. And that all changes when you have kids too. But I think children are definitely a gift from God, because my two girls are miracles, and they have changed my life completely for the better. So that's where I'm at now. And I just continue to do certain therapy programs. I continue to just read my Bible. I continue to walk in the faith the best that I can, and try to teach my kids as well. So that's kind of where I'm at so far.
That is really encouraging to people who are listening that might be experiencing something like that.
Yeah.
So,
and mine wouldn't just, it would be different emotions too. I mean, I can remember like, eating, like that would be my, my emotion to feed my nerves.
Yes.
Or I went for a long time, and instead of reaching out to get help, I would use nicotine.
Mm-hmm.
And using nicotine, I would just, cut off the edge. And then I was like, it's nicotine's all right. It's not bothering, nobody. I'm not bothering anybody, whatever, until I heard somebody one day talk about how it affects your health.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, my health? Oh yeah, I've got to have my health. I've got to protect my kids. I've got to be here healthy enough for them. And so using that too made me realize that it didn't just have to be in my mind too. It could be, physical things like that. And, not taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Self-care. I feel like us moms, we're the last ones to take care of ourselves, and that's completely understandable. But you do have to take care of yourself. And I mean, there would be weeks and weeks and weeks that I would just, neglect to do things for myself that I needed to do, just because I was in such that dark place of myself. And you think you're the only one struggling, and you're not. And that's when I finally reached out and got help whenever I could see that it was okay to ask for help.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. So I want to take it a step further. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
So in going from there, and you started progressing and growing, as you were saying, and starting to find some relief, and continue to pray.
Yes.
It's drawing your relationship closer to God.
Yeah.
Like, how did that take us from that growth in that relationship with God, and then let's go into the next level, like some of the things that you're working on today, that you're still, like, what all did that uncover that you're still working on today?
So when I first started trying to walk back my faith, I started out, I told my husband, I was like, I've got this postpartum, everything, I'm just ready to just, wipe my slate clean. So I got rebaptized almost 2 years ago this year. And when I done that, it was just like, okay, we're going to start fresh, So anyway, because I had been a heathen before. So it's like, just let's just start over. So not with my kids, but, and whatever.
Right.
So let's start fresh. I'm not saying that, baptism's wiping everything. I'm just saying I wanted to get a fresh start for myself.
You were ready.
I was ready
to grow a relationship.
Yes,
with God?
I was ready to be baptized and let people know I was ready to be on fire for God, instead of being like, all right, you want me to do this? XYZ, sure I will. But no, I'm ready. I'm ready to let people know, not be scared to sit down and talk to somebody about God, not be scared to sit down and talk to somebody about Jesus. I'm just ready to do that. So I done that and started walking my faith, figuring out where I wanted to go with it, attending Bible studies, reading a lot more, trying to, do things in my house differently, trying to teach my kids, XYZ. So whenever I was done, with my therapy programs and stuff like that, I was still working it. So about 2-3 months after I got, whenever I was doing the 12-step program, about 2 months before I was done with it, I started feeling like I was having these emotions come back from postpartum. So I was like, what is this? I was done with this. And it wasn't even the emotions like I dealt with postpartum. It was more the thoughts. And I was like, why are these crazy thoughts still coming in my head? It's like, I'm not in postpartum anymore. I'm not, whatever.
I want to highlight one thing right here.
Yeah.
Can you share with everybody, like at that point, how old was your daughter at that point?
So my daughter would be 2 at that point.
At that point.
Yeah, at that point. She was 2. And I was like, yes, she was 2. And at that point, I was like, I'm not in postpartum anymore. And I even talked to my doctor about it. I was like, this cannot be postpartum. She's like, no. She's like, if you're like that, it might just be depression. I'm like, well, I don't feel depressed. And so it would be just thoughts like, what happens if I don't know how to say it. Like, what happens if I'm putting my daughter in the vehicle and she accidentally hits her head on the vehicle? Then that's going to make me a bad mom. Or what if she accidentally, I don't know, slams her finger in the door? That's going to make me a bad mom. Like, it would just be these reoccurring things. Or what if I'm just trying to think of just something, but it would be like these reoccurring things that would cause me anxiety, and I could not get them to go away. And instead of dealing with them and trying to make them positive, I would just always be negative about them. Like, oh my gosh, what if that does happen? XYZ. So whenever I almost got done with the 12-step, me and you had talked about all this, and I was like, Angie, I just don't understand, why do they keep happening? Why do they keep happening? And throughout my childhood, I was like, realized I had picked up these patterns along my whole childhood of wanting to have things a certain way, or having negative thoughts, or having, whatever. And I was like, why has this always been in my life? It has always been in my life, and I didn't realize it. So,
do you think the whole birthing experience brought it all to a
yes.
head? Like, I'm not just the birthing experience, but like that's the beginning point of. But like 2 years later, you're starting to connect dots.
Yeah.
At that
yes.
point? Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of what happened. So I had a really big spiritual awakening on one day in August, and I remember like Jesus. It was just like almost Jesus just like spoke to me. He was like, "Briley, it's okay." I'm like, "What do you mean it's okay?" And I remember calling you and saying, "Angie, have you ever heard of people obsessing about thoughts?" And she was like, "Yeah, Briley, it's called obsessing about thoughts." And I said, well, does that mean that I could potentially have like OCD if I cannot let something go like that? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay. So I done a lot of research, and I kept seeing this app on my phone called NOCD on TikTok. And it was every ad. I was like, I want to watch something about dogs, or I want to watch somebody make something good for me to eat. And it was always this app. I'm like, okay, Lord, I'll just look at it, whatever. So I got to looking at it and realized, wow, maybe this is what I've been struggling with.
That's good stuff. It's funny how he presents exactly what we need when we don't know
Yes.
it. We're going to dive
Yes.
into that when we come back. We'll take a quick break and we're going to pick right up back
Perfect.
there.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. We are having a good time today with my friend Briley here. Okay, Briley, before the break, we got into, we're kind of like just peeling the layers of this onion back, right?
Yeah.
So we're to the point of you saw this app.
Yeah.
And that kept coming up about, what'd you say it was called again?
It's called NOCD.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're wondering at this point and investigating, could I have OCD?
Yes.
So take us from there.
Okay. So I got to ask you a question. Whenever you think of somebody with OCD, what do you think of?
Just recurring thoughts.
Recurring thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Most people would say, you're not supposed to say that, Angie. You're supposed to say somebody that washes their hands. Okay? But she didn't, but it's fine. No, just kidding. So, most of the time when you think of people that have OCD, like they're washing their hands, they're scared of germs, stuff like that. Well, it is similar like that. I don't know if y'all have ever known anybody with OCD or anything like that, but Howie Mandel, he struggled with contamination OCD. Like he even bought his own house to like stay away from people because he was so scared of stuff like that. And OCD can be very different forms. Mine is nowhere not as on a level of what his is or other people's are. I just struggle with intrusive thoughts of like, what if something happens to my kid? Or like, just an example, one time I was holding my daughter while I was cooking and it was like the stove I was on and I was like, oh no, what if something what if her foot hits that? Or what if she accidentally hits that? And like, that just tore me up to think that something like that could harm my daughter. And, somebody could have that thought in their head, like, oh no, what if her foot hits that? It would burn. Mm-hmm. But when I have that thought in my head, I fixate on it. And I think, why did I have that thought in my head? That thought makes me a terrible person. That thought makes me a terrible mom. That thought means that I want something to happen to my child. And it is not that by any means at all.
To kind of feel like you're going down a rabbit hole with
you go down a rabbit hole of one thought and you can't quit thinking about it. Well, back to the postpartum, the medication that I was taking for my postpartum, I thought, man, I feel better. I'm great. Everything's good with my postpartum. Well, then I got off the medicine and I weaned myself off of it myself. Well, I thought I weaned myself off of it. And I did not. I made the whole thing worse. Went into a very, very fearful mode and realized that the medication I was taking for the postpartum was actually regulating the OCD and didn't realize it. And I explained all this to my OCD therapist, and she was like, yeah, you can't do that. And I said, no, you can't, can you? And anyway, so back to the app. I got on the app and finally realized, okay, is this something I can afford? And my husband's like, it doesn't even matter. He's pretty much like, you're going to have to do something because you get on my nerves.
You have a good one.
I have a perfect one. So anyway, got on there and realized, I got matched with a therapist and talked to her for an hour on the phone one day. And I said, Miss Jennifer, do you think I'm crazy? And she said, no, honey, you're not. She said, you've just got OCD. I said, so you telling me right now that I have OCD just because these crazy thoughts are coming into my head and I can't let go of them? And she's like, no, you just can't let go of them. You're not, you just have it. So
how did that feel? Was it a validation moment? Did it feel relieving?
Well, it almost felt like it did feel validating, but it also felt like, wow. So I kept on thinking, okay, why can't this just go away? Why can't this just go away? Why can this just not go away? Because it has so many different forms of it. And so one day I just sat there and I thought of all the things in my childhood that lined up with OCD. And there was so many things that I thought, I had to do this for this to be right. If I didn't do this, something was going to happen. If I, what if this happens? Just all the crazy, little thoughts that I even had as a child, that I would panic about and never shared with anyone. And I realized, when I had postpartum and had that traumatic experience, it kind of just brought all this to a head for me to take care of. And, I still struggle with OCD today, not as bad as what I did at one time. And, looking back through the postpartum part of me, realizing too, there could have been some of that in there as well. That might have been why I couldn't deal with postpartum as well too. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thankful today now that I got help at Waymakers, and I'm continuing to get help with NOCD because it just fluctuates. Sometimes I can handle it really good. Sometimes I just can't, and handle it as well. But the app teaches you really good tools and stuff to use to help those things not to bother you as bad. Yeah. And it's really helped me. And I have done a lot of research about it. And there's one guy in particular on YouTube. His name is Mark DeJesus. And it looks like Mark D. Jesus. And he has been such a big influence with OCD because he struggles with it as well. But he relates everything with scripture and to Jesus. And makes these short videos, makes these long videos. He allows you to check in and ask him questions. He's even wrote a book that I've started. Nice. And it's like the OCD healing journey. And I'm like, okay. And a lot of the things that he talks about, it lines up with how I am sometimes with OCD or where I've been. And it has just really been a game changer for me, for him to line things with scripture because, the therapy is great. Yes. But the main person that's got me through this is Jesus. So, yes. Or that's holding my hand through this is Jesus. And I've always been like, why can't this just go away? Why can't this just go away? And I told you one time, I said, I feel like Paul with a thorn in my flesh, because we've all got thorns, whether they're on the inside or out. And some of us just deal with them openly or not. And it just feels like that talking about it for me makes it a little easier, and especially being able to relate with people. So
I get that question a lot. I'm glad that you mentioned that, especially like when we're going into the jails or whatever, and we're dealing with people in any kind of like bondage type situation. Maybe it's addiction. It can be, OCD. It can be a lot of things. And so like when we're talking about why can't this just go away? Yeah. some people will ask that question sometimes. I'll have that question asked to me, why won't God just heal me from this? Or why won't God just take this away from me? And, you know, sometimes there are people who are completely set free, healed, that bondage is broken. And then there's some people that sometimes it doesn't go away. And in watching God's patterns, okay, I'm not saying that this is the way, this is it, but sometimes this is where I have to ask myself too, like when I'm dealing with something and maybe God's not taking it away because maybe it's the very thing that's keeping me on my knees closest to him. I agree. And then if he took it away, how far away would I walk away from him? You know what I'm 100%. Saying? Because if we are prone to self-reliance, we will easily forget God. And we'll feel like we have all the answers. We know all the things. We can do all the things. And, you know, Paul, he used to share all the time how he was pretty prideful, you know? And so I love Paul. And he was just maybe we don't know, you know, but maybe that is what kept him close to God. And sometimes I know there's things that's been in my life that he didn't remove, but he can always use them. Absolutely. And going into that, which leads me to kind of something about what you're doing. And I'd like to put that up on the screen. Briley took all of this work that she has been doing, and you are like on a mission. Like you're on a mission to get the word out, help people. Like she is such a resource in our community. She has a podcast called Unbridled Faith, and she airs that on YouTube. And here you can see it. That's her logo there. And she gets on there. You do Bible studies. You highlight small business owners in the community to try to, you know, help them grow, draw attention to their businesses. You also plug in their faith, you know, like for them to share how Jesus and the workplace can work together. And that's one of the things I love about what you do is because we're all about doing life with Jesus. You know, if we could all get back to doing life with Jesus, we'd be back in the way. He's the way, the truth, and the life. So in that situation, like I want to commend you for that because, thank you. You know, in our town, I know the people appreciate that. And I know that they enjoy watching your podcast. It is so wonderful. She is so fun to be around, so fun to hang out with. I've been on there a couple times myself, but I love watching her. It's very entertaining. And so check her out on YouTube on Unbridled Faith. Now, tell us a little bit about what led you to do that. What led you to Unbridled Faith? So, back when I was in my postpartum, me and my husband had sold our house that we had been living in with my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter. And my oldest was like, I think she was 3, and my youngest was a month old. And we sold our house and moved in with my parents. Praise God for that, because that whole time I was going through postpartum, so my husband had extra hands, you know. And anyway, while I was there, I groomed dogs for a living. So I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to have to, you know, either rent something in town, or can I get a little building and put it here on your property and groom dogs out of it? He was like, yeah, sure, whatever you want to do. So I'm in that little building by myself, and most days until I got an employee, which is basically a little sister to me now. And she was sent by Jesus too, I feel like. But anyway, that leads me to say, in that little building, I would watch the Unashamed podcast by the Duck Dynasty boys, the Duck Boys, the Robertson Bunch. And I just remember being in there listening to that and how much it just uplifted me. And I'll never forget one of the episodes where Jace was talking about him and one of his brothers was going somewhere, and he wanted to listen to this certain song the whole way there because he was just having a bad day. He was like, I'm not talking, I'm listening to the song. And that song is called Honey in the Rock. And the verse that goes with it is Psalms 81:16. It says, I would feed you with the finest of honey, Israel, with honey from the rock, I would satisfy you. Something along those lines. It might be a little different, but that's the gist of it. And I never forget that, just thinking, listen to that song on repeat. And just from that podcast, I thought, he has said something that's inspired me to listen to the song. And I thought, if I could just get a little podcast
just something very little. Talk to my husband about it. I'm like, now listen, I'm going to have to buy this camera. I'm going to have to buy this, whatever. He was like, whatever you're going to do, Briley. I was like, okay. So when I done that, I was like, I feel like I needed to not name it something after that podcast, but name it something similar. So I knew I wanted to have faith in it, and I wanted it to be something related to kind of mine and Trey's lifestyle that we live. Because we love to ride horses. We love, being in the woods. We love, whatever. And I said, Trey, tell me something that could be like unashamed, like something like that. It don't have to match it, just something like that. He said, what about unbridled? And I said, oh, that's a good one.
I never knew he was the one that got
Yeah, he helped me. Yeah, we don't tell everybody that. So if y'all just want to just keep that to yourself. Yeah, he said something.
Out to Trey.
Yeah, he said something about like, well, you should use like, or I think I was wanting to name it like bridled or something like that. He said, well, what about unbridled? That means kind of like, without the bridle. And I was like, well, that's a good idea, because if you don't have a bridle on the horse, then, you don't have any way to stop.
Yeah.
So anyway.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So he kind of helped me name it. So from there, it just kind of took off. And I've had several people on it, and it's just very laid back. And I just hope y'all enjoy watching it, and maybe can take something from it from me or somebody.
Yes. You got to check it out on YouTube, Unbridled Faith. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back from the break. We are with Briley McPherson. We were just sharing about a podcast that she has going on, Unbridled Faith. You can find it on YouTube, and she posts things there. She has a lot of special guests, and they're local business owners and stuff. Like, you're really pouring into the community. I love the way that God has taken your story, your testimony, your journey, that you're not afraid to speak out about it. It's just such relief, I know, to a lot of people who experience the same things. You know, the best thing, the best advice sometimes we can get is peer-to-peer relations, and so it's you have things you can speak about that not everybody can. So I'm glad that you do that.
Thank you.
One of the other things I want to highlight that Briley has also done since the podcast is she has came up with, and we'll post a picture of this on the screen too, she has written a devotional journal, and it is called Radiant. I know you probably can't see the one I have very well, but her picture is there, and she is holding this journal book. It is a 40-day devotional journal, and I'm just going to say, like, I've read a lot of devotional books, and they've been really good, and they speak to me well, but I'm telling you, there's something about when you get one that just breathes at you, if that makes sense. So, like, this journal book, I think I'm on day 28. I think I told you earlier, of day 40.
Yeah.
And from the day that you brought this to me and I started it, it's like, how did she know? Well, how did she know? Well, okay. Well, today's message, how did she know? You know, it's like it speaks to me every day.
Yeah.
For where I'm at, what I need, the verse of scripture that I need, the prompting questions.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It has like the day and some scripture in it, and then it has a little daily inventory. It has prayer prompts to think about who you're going to pray for. It has daily inventory, things you want to clean up, clean house, think about, you know, cleaning up our side of the street. We do that a lot around here. That's one of the things that we focus on. And affirmations, you know, that keeps us out of those what ifs, you know, or if only this hadn't happened, if only that happened. We need to remember how much Jesus does love us.
Absolutely.
Because he is the ultimate healer.
Absolutely.
You've referred everything back to him today as far as all the healing goes. Yeah. That he walks with you every day. Yeah. And obviously he is, because he's using you as such a vessel. And I'm so grateful for that. And she has come to my rescue, no telling how many times. I mean, there's like, she just sacrifices herself selflessly all the time for people that she loves in her community. So I'm just really, I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to call you my best friend. I really encourage you though to check this out. Now, Briley, let's tell them how they can find this. So you have an Unbridled Faith Facebook page as well. Yes. Can they reach you on there?
Oh, absolutely.
There?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can just message me on that page. It's Unbridled Faith, and you'll see a little picture. It's a little black picture, and it's got
it's the same logo, right?
Yes, the same logo. Yep.
Same logo as her YouTube channel. Message her there. She would love to hear from you. Send her a request.
I can ship them wherever. Yeah.
You can ship them.
Don't matter. Great. Yeah.
And they're $15.
Yeah, they're $15. Yep. $15. And
you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. Like, it's very, very prompting. And it's just really good. I think you're working on a second one too, right?
Yeah. So that's really exciting. I'm glad I can kind of announce that. I'm working on a second one. I'm hoping to have it done within the next month. And it's going to be for mothers, and not that anybody else cannot read it, but it's going to be more centered around mothers. And I really hope that it can help somebody, just like kind of what you were saying. So I appreciate you sharing that with me, and I appreciate you having me on here.
We've
given me the opportunity.
We've loved it. Tell them what inspired you for this. You told us what inspired you with the podcast. Tell them what inspired you for this.
Yeah. So for about 8 months, I kept on feeling like I just needed to write something. And I was like, I don't know if I need to write, a book. I don't know what I need to do. So finally, I just, was like, I'm going to do a journal. So for about a week, I sat down and wrote down all the things that I felt like I needed to do and put in it. And finally got it all put together, and took it to a local lady in town. And I said, can you fix it for me like this? And she said, yep, we can do it. And she got me a prototype, and there was things that I fixed in it. And we ended up getting this one. And I told my husband, I said, even if I just sell 10, I said, it's not about that. I said, it's just something that I can, give back with, that I feel like God's poured into me. And so I wrote it, and I told him, I said, I'm going to post this on your Facebook if you don't care. And he was like, sure, go ahead. So I did. And I was like, well, maybe I'll sell 10 of them. And I ended up selling several. So, which that was completely a blessing from God. And so I always wanted to let people know, like, whenever they bought them, that, some of the money will be used for something God related, whether it's to help somebody buy something that's, going to be in one of the local houses, or if it's somebody just to help with, water, somebody to help with groceries, something like that, or just donating it to a nonprofit. And anyway, that's, how I started doing that. And like I said, hopefully my next one will be done in a month or so.
I need you to get it done within 12 days, because I'm on day 28 and I've got 40.
12 days.
I'm going to have to start over. So this is one that I think I'll keep using over and over. Yeah. So Briley, thank you again so much for coming on the show today and being willing to be vulnerable, sharing all of that. If you have questions for her, she doesn't mind. I'm sure you'll reach out. But find her on Facebook, YouTube. Yeah. And tune into her podcast. It's a great show, and you'll just enjoy. You'll hear a lot about hometown stories of business owners, but you'll also hear their testimonies of faith as well. Yep. And so that's another. Jesus in the workplace. I love it.
Yes, definitely. That was my whole goal for it too, just people sharing their faith.
Well, it has been so much fun to have you here today.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So.
And we'll probably be having her back, especially when she gets done with this next book, and
All
I
right.
can tell all about that. So thank you for tuning in today, and tune in next week. We'll have another special guest at that time. So you have been watching The Way to Break Free on Bold Brave TV, and we'll see you next week.
This has been The Way to Break Free with your host, Angela Pedigo. The one thing Angela attributes her personal victories to is her relationship with God and her deep faith. Tune in each week and hear stories and testimonies of people in personal and professional trenches and how they overcome them with their own faith in God. The Way to Break Free has something for everyone, everywhere. Right here, Wednesdays, noon Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.